Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So welcome back to the part two of the Chagusian Island, a paradise in Africa by the Indian Ocean between Mauritius and Seychelles, you know, called the archipelago area within the Indian Ocean. So the history of these people is very touching because if you go back to the part one where I was trying to make the introduction, something happened and the whole thing cut so short. So I decided to complete the recording this time around and hope that we stay on without any disruption. So what happened was that the British in the 1960s, I think around 65 and thereabout, while we were winding up in the colonialism in all over Africa, are trying to put their stooges, to rule for them. When I mean stooges, I mean Africans who were, stooges to the British, to fill in for them while they will be ruling through some remote devices and what have you. So before they gave independence to Mauritius, because Mauritius was made up of various islands with the Mauritius that you now know today and you know, the Chagos Island, which consists of so many islands like what they call Garcia and what have you, Diego, I think Diego Garcia, etc. So then the America chose this particular spot. So why they were looking for an island to set up their base, military base. So because they were scared of losing power, to whoever I don't know, they were scared of. Maybe they were scared of USSR or scared of Britain themselves. But I don't think they were scared of Britain because Britain were the ones that gave them this same, uh, um, let's say, blank check to look for any island, even if it's within their own premise, so they'll be able to see if it was good enough for them to strike a deal with. Because the British were owing the Americans some money, some millions of dollars, I think about $24 million. So the deal was that okay, we'll give you an island, to set up a military base. Then you write off, all the debts that we owe you. And the Americans agree. So they went to some island, and for some reasons, they said that was not good enough. Then they saw this one, then they said this one was good. This called Chagos. So, but what happened is not was actually tragic because they went ahead to take this island, deploy all their military might into this island, undermining the indigenous people that owns this place or that has lived in this place for centuries, etc. So when they got in there, then they start to evict them by deporting them, sharing them into some other various islands like the Mauritius itself, the mainland, the other part of Mauritius, and taking the other ones to Seychelles. So what that meant was that they now took these people to a place where they have no standing. So they were sent there like refugees, and they were treated as such as refugees till now, even as we speak in 2023. So they be so disorganized. All they have to leave behind, and so many of those things were destroyed by the Americans and the British. That includes livestock, buildings, and every other thing. The burial ground of their parents or their forefathers and things like that, their cultural heritage and so many other things, their churches, etc., and their culture. or their cultural beliefs and belief system. Everything was taken from them, all their shrines and things were destroyed by the second colonialists, which was the Americans and the British on the other side. So that was what actually happened. So let me just take you through it so you learn as you go. But the reason for this clip is that the Africans should always learn from their past. Don't always rely on the British and the Americans to always intervene in your issues when they cannot even tell from their left, or from their, they cannot even distinguish from their between the difference between their left and right in most cases, because their greed do becloud their judgment sometimes to the extent that they don't really care, whatever casualties that happen, as long as it has to happen to any other race that is not them or that is not theirs. They don't care as long as they get what they want. So that's how it has been. So nothing has changed. So all this fighting about political powers and structures and things like that that the Africans are doing sometimes, I think deep down or behind or right in your face, they laugh at you all day, all night. So because it's one little mistake, one of these days you wake up and you'll be surprised that these people, they will deploy their military might all over your land and restrict you, from going to your farms, or even be issuing passes to you to move on the street or move freely in some certain areas because they've taken it over, or because they've rented it to them for the next 50 or 100 years. So Africans should know or should learn from their past and know how to live in peace with one another. That's my message for today. So let me just take you back to how this whole thing happened. Then you can hear from some narrators on their own from their own opinion.
Ne mana tu prends tu as ça zone dans l'Afrique, comment ça le prends tu fais mais d'abord permet nous la scène dans la main dans le pied. Mais nous sommes comme ça. C'est mal parti de l'état mettre la scène est un peu invisible.
Coming from the Human Rights Watch.
Et qu'une fois nous mettre fusil dans les dos, nous avons au bateau.
Tu vois, une fois, ouais, c'est tendu, nous. Parce que tu vois, avec la terre.
Allô?
Allô? Bonsoir.
Bonsoir, papy.
Bonsoir, Eliane. Ça va, Yann?
Oui, ça va. Fatigué, mais préparé pour venir. Résiste. Des jours, on prend avion. 3 jours pour m'atterrir.
Dis, gars, tu vas pas venir Salem, là, non?
Si tu veux venir.
I moved to the UK when I was 15 years old, but my parents stayed in Mauritius. In the 1960s, hundreds of Chagossians, including my mom, were forced to leave the Chagos archipelago or not allowed to return because the British and US governments wanted to make space for a US military base. That UK-US pact had a detrimental impact for those living on the islands as well as for future generations, causing many families to be divided. The islands of the Chagos archipelago are in the Indian Ocean. Under British colonial rule from 1814, it was governed as part of Mauritius.
Ça va, oui, ça gauchien, tout un grand jimon, tout chivi pour une seule famille. C'est qu'il y a d'autres notes, c'est qu'il y a d'autres qui, tu bol carré, pour tout, pour taser, une vie pour ça. Tout pour une famille, problème, là, tout l'autre, tout ensemble. comme ça.
Là, samedi, ban du monde fait cigare, tout le monde danser ensemble. Mais c'est vraiment une jolie la vie.
In the 1960s, Britain ruled over about 18 countries and 3 territories in Africa.
Many African states were already engaged in the process of starting to fight for their independence. Mauritius was fully engaged in this process.
Britain granted independence to Mauritius in 1968, but with a major caveat: the UK would keep the Chagos archipelago for a small price.
US government officials in the era of decolonization were growing concerned about losing control of the world. So a group of officials in the US Navy developed a plan to identify small islands around the world, and Diego Garcia became the prime island on which they wanted to build a base.
Diego Garcia is one of the main islands in the Chagos archipelago where many families had lived for generations.
The secret deal began being worked out by the US and British governments in the early 1960s, where the US government insists to the British that we want this base and we want it without any local population.
So you see that? So the US said they want that place because it was not yet a base as at that time. So they want that space, that area, that piece of land, that piece of island, so that they only want to see any population there. To the extent that they have to evict these people, kill all their animals, gas their animals, just like Hitler did in 1945 and thereabout, 1943 to 45, when they gas, so many Jewish people. So in this case, they gas all their animals and stuff like that, according to them. They deported a lot of the indigenous people out of that land. Sent some to, they divided families, sent some to Seychelles and the other one to Mauritius, etc. So that was how they were able to get rid of these people and clear the whole place for themselves. Then turn the whole island to a military base, etc. So after a while, then these people were asking asking for permission to return home. They were refused that permission to return to their own home. Okay, they also asked for permission to even visit the graveyards of their loved ones that they left behind, and so many other religious places and things like that. So they were also denied. So up to now, that issue is still pending because even the court, international court, has ruled in favor of the people. That these people don't have any business just being there and denying the indigenous people the right, to their own land. So, but the issue is that the people are not asking the American base to leave because they still feel like if the American base is there, at least they can still provide, a lot of jobs for them. Because these people have been so impoverished, so they will still want to enjoy some of those privileges, if they are allowed to go back to their land because at least they maybe have an opportunity to work in the base there as civilian, staffs. And but what they naturally like to do is to go back to their home and enjoy their paradise as given to them by God, then enjoy the agricultural produce and fisheries, etc. Or maybe also turn their own little paradise to what do you call it, tourist, attractions and things like that. So they are not asking for much. They are just asking for, a path or a pathway back to their own homeland without any problem. So Africans should learn that if that thing is possible for the British and the Americans to connive and do for the past 50 years, and yet, yes, I mean, they still occupy that place or that space up till now without nobody actually talking about it, then it's still possible for them to go to any other part of the world, whether in Africa, and still do the same thing. So Africans should enjoy know what they have right now and enjoy it. So and cherish it and guide it jealously. That is the idea behind this clip that I'm making. So let's move forward and see what's happening.
This segment maman vini and go qui met les anneaux avec matelas, ça même les restes tout quitté. Tout quitté.
Il met bandichet la calorifère, met gaz à lycée, scalissé boy.
They were shipped on boats which were carrying bird excrements, which are used for fertilizers.
Racism shaped every step of this sad, appalling story. You have a group of almost entirely white Euro-American
You see, white Euro-Americans deciding what
officials making decisions about a population of African
and
Indian ancestry and deciding simply that their rights and their interests are unimportant. You can see the racism most blatantly when British officials describe the Chagosians. They are treated as less than human.
It's just this great feeling of being able to see your family again. As I got older, I started to be more conscious about the Chagosian struggle. And with my mom being part of a group, I go with her to meetings and I get to listen to their stories.
Nous venons ici dans le bureau, nous comme une famille, nous faisons la cuisine, toutes les affaires. Nous, pour nous, ça, qu'il tient la reste. Entre nous, ben camarades.
Quand nous tous nous joignons, ça qui amène sur la peine, nous cause ça. Et là, l'autre dit camarade, arrêtez. Reste, prends courage, vive, nous visons un point, sinon nous sommes malades.
Some Chagosians who were forced to leave were first taken to the Seychelles, where some stayed with family. The rest were deported to Mauritius, separating some families forever. No one received financial compensation from the British government at this time.
Je nous quitte tout là-bas. Quitte mes bêtes, quitte les animaux, quitte tout. Nous disons des bonnes affaires quand on est ici, vous avez maman, je vous donne. Mais quand vous venez juste avant de tout seul. On est bien malade, le bâtiment. Moi, tiens, c'est quand vous venez. On est bien malade. Quand on a une brise, on perd une brise enfant. C'est à moi de rendre. Nous commençons dans la case de l'université. Ça, c'est ça la casa. Nous sommes dans la cacavas. Et là, du monde, pas si bien content. Nous ne sommes pas connus pour faire un zig à la sortie. Ben, fini femme là. Ben, nous sommes nous d'ici, nous sommes désespérés.
Following years of protests and legal proceedings, some adult Chagosians living in Mauritius received 2 payments that they say together amounted to roughly 44,000 Mauritian rupees. or land as an alternative for the second.
Beaucoup de sang, beaucoup la guerre pour gagner sa casque gagner là.
To receive the second payment, a signature or thumbprint was required.
The form was in purely English legal contents. That means that most of our people don't speak English. This is a way that British government just want things to go around so that we don't understand anything.
The document stated that Chagossians in Mauritius were agreeing to renounce their right to return to Chagos.
Mais si nous connaissons, nous ne pouvons pas signer. Si nous pouvons renoncer nos droits, pas qu'on est civil.
We are black people coming from African, and this is why we got this kind of treatment.
Chagossians living in the Seychelles never received any compensation like those in Mauritius, and they have not been able to return. In 2000, the British High Court in London ruled that the expulsion of the Chagos Islanders was illegal under UK law.
Very happy for my people because we had been suffered for 35 years. It's a great pleasure for us to be allowed to return on our motherland.
For a few years, Chagossians could legally return to some of the islands but were not financially compensated by the UK. 4 years later, the UK government, claiming security and cost reasons, reimposed the legal ban on Chagossians returning to their homeland. The UK, with the US, forced the displacement of an entire population. They blocked their right to return to their homeland, and my people were persecuted on the grounds of race. These amount to crimes against humanity according to international law.
I fly back home most of the time when it's a big event happening. We want the whole family to be together. In 2003, the British granted British citizenship to the Chagossians and the first generations, which allowed people like my sisters and I to move to the UK. But not everyone had the chance to, because there were limitations and restrictions, such as the age of the first generations and the spousal visas. My mom's siblings were not born on the Chagos Islands, so they and my cousins are not eligible for the British citizenship. It just makes me think that if the Chagossians were not deported, if my family, my grandparents, my mom were allowed back on the islands, none of this would have happened.
There are now about 3,000 Chagossians living in Crawley in the UK.
I not want to lose my culture. I created a group called Elderly Lunch Club to give them activity and to forget this pain, to live their lost life in this earth, be happy. Every Wednesday we see this happiness because we see how they feel like free.
I was born in Mauritius and I was discriminated just because my parent was from Chagos. I realized there was no future for me in Mauritius. When Chagossians were granted British passport in the early 2000s, I saw an opportunity, obviously, for a better life. I came to the UK in 2003 in a group of 26 people. We ended up going to sleep in Gatwick Airport for a week. It was embarrassing. We lost our dignity almost 20 years down the line. What has the UK government done to make our life a bit easier? Nothing. Nothing apart from giving us a British passport.
Every Chagosian have a different point of view about what they want. But at the end, when you just think about it, we are all fighting for the same thing, for our rights of return. When we talk to the politicians, especially here in the UK, they always say they can't turn the clock back. But for me, I think it's time to turn the clock forward and let Chagosian return to their island.
You know, so that's the, you know, that's the best way for me to wrap up this thing. That the issue is fast forward. They don't want to go back. Like the British politicians have said to them that you cannot turn back the hands of time. But at least this woman is saying, then, but at least you can fast forward to allow us to go back to our homeland. That's what we're asking. So what the point is that Africans that tend to have the freedom that they enjoy right now as far as colonialism, is concerned, they should make the best of it and move forward, because we still remember what happened in so many other countries, and in so many cases we tend to quickly forget what actually got us to the present position of things. So I think we should always learn from the past and to use it to propel our future for the betterment of ourselves and for these generations and the next generations and generations yet to born. So that is it. So ladies and gentlemen, please subscribe to our channel, give us a thumbs up, and share please, share our videos, educate our people, make them to to be awoken to their responsibilities. Your politicians are messing up the whole system every now and then. Every opportunity they have, they mess it up. Instead of them to use our resources to develop and better our loss, then they are exploiting our resources and taking it outside to go and better others. So that thing has to stop. So, but in the meantime, let the youth who knows what is going on open their eyes and educate the people around them, so that we can at least at the end of the day make a better future for, or create a better future for ourselves and for the generations yet unborn. So please share our videos and give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our videos on our channel if you have not. This is Niger Matters TV. I am your host, Jay, signing out. Bless you.